All right, I'm going to call the November 19th, 2024 Administration Committee meeting for St. Croix County to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Burning.
Present.
Vice Chair Counter.
Present.
Supervisor Fiedler.
Present.
Supervisor Long.
Present.
Supervisor Shirley is excused today. We have a quorum.
Thank you. So we are looking at the minutes. Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes? Any changes or amendments to the minutes? Any changes or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, we will consider the minutes approved. We'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to business items. Number one, financial report to October 2024.
Yep, the report is in your packet. Just a couple of highlights then. Vehicle registration fee continuing strong at that new rate that we have that started this year. And then sales tax, we had a decent month, so in line with past years and sort of leveling off year to date to be pretty close to what it was last year. So all things are good there. And then our KIP report, you can see a lot of projects are getting completed then as we approach the year end. Some will carry over into the new year. And then our ARPA projects, you can see most of those are now closed out, as those are all, nearly all of them are going to be ending as of the end of this year. Any other questions on the financial report? I'd be happy to answer.
We've got Supervisor Long.
Well, I know we kind of fly through this pretty regularly, but every once in a while I kind of like to stop and at least ask the question, especially now that we're getting close to the end of the year. Are there any surprises, any things that are a little unusual or other things that we may need to be aware of? And I know you always do a good job of pointing those out, but every once in a while I just kind of feel like I have to ask.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, you know, we're on target. I mean, there's a few areas, line items of the budget that are over here or there, overtime for the sheriff or interpreter and the clerk of courts, you know, different things here or there throughout the budget. But when you look at it overall as a whole, we'll finish in the black again.
Supervisor Counter.
I just had a couple of questions. One was on, again, for the, it seems like our costs for on the software and subscription renewals, we really got, again, we're about 19,000 over just for the county board members. In the county board section of the membership, in your 19,928, so 90%. And just that, I flagged that one just as far as the questions as to why that's happening. And
Yep, so you see that we're over by the $19,000, but you also see that we have other federal payments of $25,000. So technically we're under by $5,000. So the other federal payments are ARPA dollars. So part of this new software that we're using, we funded through use of some of our ARPA dollars. So that's why it wasn't originally budgeted. It looks like it's over on the expense side, but it's being offset by that revenue. So we're under by 5.
then the other one was just the provided food expense. What happened there?
A lot more of you went to the WCA conference. So like 3 times as much as I normally budget for.
Budgetary.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
It's not Scott.
No,
Okay.
I can confirm it's not.
no, I'm just teasing you anyway, Scott. All right, so are there any other questions on the financial report? Any other questions on the financial report? Okay, seeing none, no action, correct? It needs to be taken. So we'll move on to number 2, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of $7.5 million in general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025A. Administrator Witt, if you'd take this.
Yeah, so this will be the initial resolution, and we have Sean Lentz here. I'll have him go through the pre-sale report, and then if you have any questions after that, we'll be happy to answer those for you. I'll scroll through there for you, Sean.
Yeah. Great there we go. It's coming through loud and clear. Yeah, thank you, Ken, and good evening to everyone. I'm Sean Lentz with Ellers. We worked with Ken on putting together a pre-sale report for the proposed financing for 2025. We've got some assumptions in here on interest rates. I'll talk a little bit about that, but what I would expect is to have this report be updated as we get closer to the time that the county and Ken suggest proceeding with the financing, but I think this will give you a real good idea of the impact of the bond issue or the note issue that you're projecting for 2025. And Ken, what might be helpful, just to highlight the big picture stuff, is if I could go to the exhibits at the end, if you wouldn't mind. I will come back to that timeline at the end, but thank you, Ken. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the proposed 20-year repayment schedule for the $7.5 million in general obligation promissory notes. Just a quick note for the committee members. The last time that the county issued debt, they had different rules for promissory notes. Promissory notes are a very flexible financing tool that the county can use to fund almost any type of capital project and either non-capital projects that you can think of. But under the old rules prior to 2024, you had to repay promissory notes within 10 years. And the legislature made that change to 20 years, and it's made it a little bit easier to combine financing all into a single issue. Not always so much for counties, but certainly for cities and villages and towns. But for you guys, makes the most sense because this is a very flexible tool to do promissory notes for future financings. I would see that being the direction we would go in. The credit quality of a bond and a note is exactly the same. So it's not like you're doing anything different there. It's just the titles that the state has used for general obligation debt in the past. The repayment schedule that you see on the screen right now then is the proposed 20-year repayment for the $7.5 million. We're using interest rates that are about 0.5% above current market conditions as if we were talking today. As an example, Ellers worked with Whitefish Bay last week. Their rating is very good. I don't think it's quite as good as the county's AA1 rating, but they got interest rates that were around 3.6%, and we're at around 3.95 here. So we're conservative, I think, given current market conditions right now. Ken, if we can go to the next slide. This next one is just a reminder for the committee. When you use general obligation debt, the state does have a limit on how much the county can use that for. Ken's highlighting the red line that represents St. Croix County's limit. The limit is 5% of the equalized value of the entire county. So for you guys, that's almost $900 million in general obligation debt that you could issue. If you look at the bottom of the page, with the proposed new issue, you're a little bit over $100 million. So it's, you've used this very conservatively. You did have the recent borrowing a couple years ago for this facility, which was an extraordinary legacy type project. But normally year to year, the county has a long history of using borrowing when you need it, but using it on a very conservative basis. If we go to the next slide. This next one, probably a little more important for the committee members and the board members and the staff. This is the actual debt levy for the county's existing debt, and that's the blue bars that you see. And then with the proposed new issue of $7.5 million, the green bars on top of the blue bars are representative of the additional new debt service that the county would be adding for that $7.5 million being paid back over 20 years. And as you look at this chart, there is a gradual decline. And then as you get out into the early 2040s, a major decline. that's representative of when the debt for this facility is completely extinguished and paid back at that time. The strategy, and Ken provides us a lot of input on this, of the gradual decline rather than say a numbers where it's just flat across, is it's also allowing, depending on the county's future projects, and I think we've shared with the committee and I think the full board in the past some future projections with other hypothetical issues that the county board might be considering being added here. So the strategy with the existing debt being as it is now is to allow for future debt. We know if the county has larger major projects that come up, probably will require an increase in the debt levy, but more of the kind of annual, more normal KIP projects that you guys have can hopefully be fit in and kind of managed in and around the current debt level that you are. So legacy projects will probably drive us above that, but more of the normal KIP projects, those that you do need to finance, probably managed very well within the debt as it's set up right now. Yep, Ken?
And then so the bars represent how much we're asking the taxpayers for every year. And so per your guidance, what we want to do is make sure that there's no increase. So you're going to see just a little bit of an increase in 2026, and then we come back to that same level for the next couple of years, and then the continued steps down. So that little bit that we're over for 2026, we will address that by using a non-tax levy source. So I'm promising you we'll fix that when we do the 2026 budget. But that was the guidance that you guys had provided on this debt issue.
And Ken, real briefly, if we go back to the last slide, I did forget to mention one more back. Sorry about that. I get this question all the time, and I mention it to the committee. Normally, when we do a 20-year issue like this, interest rates are fairly good. They're not 2% like they were when we did the financing for the administrative building, 2 to 3%, but they are in and around 4% right now for long-term debt. But that being said, we also want to have some flexibility should interest rates go down in the future, that if the county wanted to take advantage of that to refinance or pay debt off early. On a debt issue like this, 20 years, the first 8 years are probably going to be non-callable, non-prepayable. But starting in that 9th year through the 20th year, at your option, you'll be locked in to the interest rates for the whole 20 years. But if lower rates are available, the county will have the option of refinancing into lower interest rates if they're available. Or if you're fortunate enough to have a cash buildup, you could potentially start making prepayments. Either of those options would be available. So I did want to mention that you know, that the 20-year debt would not be a situation where the county could never prepay or never refinance. It's usually about 8 years in that you'll have that option going forward. Okay.
And then the other thing to point out is there's a principal payment in every year. And maybe it's not front loaded, it's more sort of middle loaded. You see the $500,000 principal payments in those middle years. But if you look at the midway point of the bond issue or the promissory notes, we've paid off half of the original debt by the midway point. And so we're not backloading the debt. Right. I know that's also an important feature that the county board looks for.
Great. And then, Ken, I think the only one we had left was the tax impact one, which is the last. There we go. So preliminarily, this is assuming the same equalized value for the county that your budget this year and then next year's budget, 25 for 26. If that value, that the equalized value of the county stays exactly the same, we've ran some scenarios. And again, this is with the increase that Ken talked about in the green bar above the blue bar for the next budget, 25 for the 26 year for the county. If you levied for the entire amount and you had no change to the rest of your levy, this is just looking at the debt. If I owned a $400,000 property, if I was a homeowner and my home was worth $400,000 in equalized value in the county, the debt issue, all other things equal, value staying the same, would cause about a $10.64 increase above the previous year for this financing. So is there any questions on that? Again, that's equalized value staying exactly the same, so no growth in the county's value. And then also nothing else changing in the county's budget. All your other levy, all your other expenses stay exactly the same from this current 24 to 25 for 25 to 26. If the debt is the only thing that increases, this would be the impact of that increase. We want to make you aware of that. And then we've got other values there, but I think around the 400,000 is the median value according to Zillow right now.
And then per your guidance, we won't have an increase. It'll be zero.
Yep. Ken, if you can go back to the timeline, I'll finish up there. I appreciate everybody's patience. So what we've laid out is for this evening for the committee and then potentially for the board on the 3rd is a pre-sale review of the initial resolution as well as the plan of finance. We'd be looking right now at moving forward with the financing in and around April into May. A couple things that'll happen at that point. We would work with county staff on the development of what's called the official statement. That's the marketing document that gets sent out to bidders. And we'll also go through the process of renewing the county's bond rating. I've talked about this before. Excellent bond rating, a AA1, one step below the very highest AAA, and we'll make our effort and pitch to them again that we'd love to see us go up to that level. But we do those steps, and we'd be looking in May to distribute the official statement to prospective bidders with the idea of tying the competitive sale to the county's regularly scheduled meeting in June, which I think I had down as the 3rd. And if the bids are acceptable with this timeline to the county board at that time, the closing or funding date would be, somewhere to 30 to 45 days out for there that the county would have cash in hand for the 2025 capital projects that you're borrowing for, which I think the primary one is that county shop building, right? That's the satellite building, right? Yep. So this would be the time schedule, but at this point, if there's any questions on the schedule or on any of the numbers, be happy to answer those.
Supervisor Long.
I'm kind of curious, how does this schedule fit then within working with architects and construction, and how does that kind of fall into the schedule?
Yep. So the day after the county board approves this resolution, Robbie will sign an agreement with the architect. So he has that all prearranged and ready to go. They will start design and then start bidding the first components around the May timeframe. And so this is lining up with when those first larger payments are going to start coming in on that project. They would hope construction-wise then to get the building wrapped up by the fall and then finish the interior work over the winter and open next spring, the following spring.
Are there any, Supervisor Counter, go ahead.
Not that you have a crystal ball,
Yes.
but do you see with the current climate change and things that interest rates, do you see them stable or potentially dropping slightly, or how do you feel for the future?
Yeah, it is a crystal ball, as you say, but I think what we're hoping will occur is with the continued Fed action on the short end of the yield curve, we start seeing rates come down as they cut and kind of retrench from where they were a couple years ago. On the long-term rates, so going out that 10, 15, 20 years, I think we'll see more as we get into the new administration and where they go, economic activity. But the plan or the trend was to hopefully see stable to maybe slightly lowering rates as we go into 2025, pending any of those large scale factors that might occur with some of the instability in the world. But that's the outlook as we're seeing it right now, is for the most part steady as she goes. But hopefully on that short end of the curve, we're starting to see some drop of rates. The other thing I would mention to the committee is I've got a chart, and I'm happy to hand it out too, that I was just looking at earlier today. One thing called that we have that's called the bond buyer index. We look at it in a 2-year, 10-year, and 30-year. right now, the 30-year, we're almost right at the average over the last 30 years is where the rates are right now. A couple years ago, when you were doing the administrative building financing, we were at a trough, and you guys got that financing in before that trough really took off, and rates went from about the 2% range up to the 4% range on the bond buyer index. We're still kind of in that same range, maybe a little bit down from it that we were a couple years ago when that big increase occurred. I think it was 2022. I think it was March of 2022 that we really started to see the lift off. So that's what we're anticipating, and hopefully it'll be right in that range.
So how many tens of millions of dollars did we save by borrowing the 80 million then instead of now?
Yeah, there certainly were some major savings by taking advantage. I mean, I don't know that it would be twice the cost, Ken, but it wouldn't be too far off. And the other thing that happened for the county, I would imagine Ken has shared with you because he covers the numbers very thoroughly, is that because we borrowed at a low point, but rates went up afterward, the county was able to take advantage of that from an investment standpoint. And you were able to take the borrowed proceeds while construction was going on and investing those at much higher interest rates than we did the borrowing, because when we did the borrowing, rates around that 2.5%. And then within 6 months of that, I think we were up closer to the 4 into the 5% investment rates that you were able to go into, very secure investment rates as well. So yeah, the timing worked out excellent for the county, I think, all things considered on the facility, the administrative facility financing.
So as far as what I see, the interest rates at 4% here, kind of what we're looking at, hopefully are on the high side. They're historically not probably going to go higher than that. We're hoping to see them come down. I mean, we're not going to get back into the 2% range, though. But if we can get into the low threes, I think is what I would guess for the May bond issue or promissory note sale.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Sean? Any other questions?
I'd like to just add two things if I could.
Yes.
One is when you look at our total principal and interest payments, you can see that they vary from year to year. They seem to go up and then down and then up again. It's because I've modified this schedule to blend it with our existing debt, but also in modifying it, I've dropped the total interest costs by about $300,000. So by blending it and pulling more of the debt into the earlier years, we save on total cost. So one of those highlights. And then when you look at this blending and the steps down, these steps are built with future debt issues potentially in mind. And so 2027 is when we'll do another potential debt issue for the jail project. And so we have that step down in 29, and then we have another step down in 31. So we can increase payments on that issue without increasing tax levy. So they're pre-built in to the system. And then going out future years, other debts are just falling off, and that's why you see those big steps then.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Any other comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. We'll move on to our next. We do need to pass it. Okay, yep. So I need a motion. Go ahead, Supervisor Long.
I'll move to approve the initial resolution authorizing the issuance of $7.5 million general obligation promissory notes.
Motion by Long.
I'll second that.
Second by Counter. Discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Number 3, consideration of the 2025 County Clerk's office fee schedule. Anybody want to take that one?
Christine, you want to explain these? Sure. I mean, you came all the way in here, so.
Across the hall.
Thank you, Sean.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm just seeing a need with inflation and cost of things in our office, mailing, postage, all of that stuff going up, to increase a couple of our fees, one being our photo fee for passports, which is currently at $10. I think it's always been at $10. There's neighboring counties and even the post office, Walgreens is $16.99. The post office in River Falls and Somerset is, I think, $15.99, and other counties are ahead of that as well. So with the amount of postage it costs, you can fit 7, when we mail out these things, you can fit 7 in one envelope, and it's gone up to $10.85 this year per envelope. And we mail out almost 3,000 passports a year. So just to kind of offset some of that increasing costs with all that, even buying the paper for the photos, the cameras, the dock stations, all of that stuff has increased. So I'd like to increase that passport photo fee from $10 to $15. The other one I wanted to increase was the marriage license waiver fee. So if you don't know what a marriage license waiver is, that is when someone comes in for a marriage license, there is a statutory 3-day waiting period before that marriage license can be released. Either you mail it to them, you can mail it to the officiant, or they can come back in and pick it up. Sometimes the main reason is for that waiver is that they've made their appointment at such a time there isn't 3 days. Like they're going upstairs in an hour to meet with Tim Heckman and get married. So they have to do a waiver of that 3 days and pay that $10. Also, though, the laws changed a couple of years ago. It used to be that you would have to apply for a marriage license in the county which you were getting married at. So if you're getting married in Door County, you would have to go to Door County to get your marriage license. They've changed it now to where you can go anywhere in this state, no matter where you're getting married. So a lot of people are coming here, but some of them don't want the inconvenience of having to come back. We've had a couple of marriage licenses this year go out in the mail and they weren't received. So then they come back in and we have to do another one. So there's a large amount of people that would just rather do the waiver of the 3 days and take that marriage license with them just for the security of knowing that they have it. Maybe they're getting married in Door County and they're leaving in the next week and they don't want to come back in. The $20 fee is, it's comparable to other counties. Some neighboring counties actually are at $25. There's a little bug in here. At $25, so I would like to increase that to $20, starting in 2025.
And we need a resolution on this, or?
So it's just a motion by the committee to approve it.
Okay, I'll entertain that motion. Is there anyone that would like to make that motion? Okay, Supervisor Long.
I will move to approve the fee increase for the county clerk.
Okay, there's a motion by Long. Is there a second? I'll second it.
Okay.
Discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Next up, we got a resolution amending purchasing policy. Who would like to take that one?
I'll take that. So we needed to update our purchasing policy. The last time was 2021. We needed to add a section around suspension and debarment verification procedure. That's for federal funds. One second. So while we did that, we also kind of added some clarifying language around a few areas. You can see in here any of the changes were made are kind of highlighted in blue and red. And then we also added some links for our supplier forms, tax exempt forms, just things for our internal employees. But the big section. So right here, this 5.2, the suspension and disbarment verification procedure. So this is around any federal funds received for projects above $25,000 annually. We just basically have to look on sam.gov, which is System of Award Management. Basically, they need to verify that the vendors we use aren't suspended or disbarred for federal funding. So that's basically what this whole section is about here. And then the other thing we had at the bottom was just around new vendors. We have a form that we are requiring new vendors to fill out for the supplier information. Basically, we need to know the contact persons who are eligible to make changes for that vendor, because trying to protect ourselves, so we're talking to the right person, so we don't change it and get money sent to a scam or something like that, so. Any questions around it?
Are there any questions? Any questions, comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to bring the resolution forward. Anybody? Bueller? I've wanted to do that for so long. Anyone?
I'd make a motion to approve it's more than the purchasing policy or what? I got to look for what the
It's a resolution amending the purchasing policy.
resolution amending the purchasing policy.
There's a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Supervisor Long. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously. With that, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Any requests for future agenda items? How about announcements? Anything fun and exciting? My son got promoted to the halftime show at Madison, so he's kind of happy. That's a cool announcement. All right, hearing no other announcements other than my son being awesome, we'll go on to the date of the next meeting, which will be December 17th, 2024. With all business items completed, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.